Welcome to the DIY Entrepreneurs. I have a treat for you guys today. We're going to talk with a mental illness professional, and he's going to share some things about coaching versus counseling. And I thought this was a very important conversation to have. One, because we're still kind of climbing out of this pandemic stage that the entire world was in. But also, too, it left us kind of in a state where we were kind of secluded from others and isolated from others. And one of the reasons why I think that this topic is so important was because during the pandemic, I myself, and I'm pretty transparent, but I myself kind of struggled with some of these thoughts, whether I needed coaching or counseling in that time where we were isolated and just by the rules of the government, we were not able to associate with a lot of people. And so I think that this conversation is worth having because we're at that point where we're now going back out to engage with others. But if we've done what we're supposed to do as far as mental health, we had some time to reflect on some things, and that may have brought some other questions up. So I want to introduce to you guys James Edwards. And let me just share now my background with James. He made me aware just a few months ago that I was actually one of the instructors for a program that he participated in a few years ago. Well, not a few years ago, probably about a decade ago. But, I was a director and computer trainer in a community training initiative, and he brought to my awareness that he was a student in one of those courses. I thought I knew James because I worked with him. Some years after that, we worked and we also facilitated at a community college downtown Chicago. And that's what my memory of James Edwards have been. But I want to introduce you guys to who James Edwards is. James Edwards is a certified life coach and certified solutions-focused coach with 20 years of training in the field of behavioral health. He's committed to advocacy and the provision of behavioral health services as it relates to the health and well-being of persons with a diagnosis of severe mental illness, recovery, re-entry, and the LGBTQIA communities. He's the founder for Mzizi for Life Coaching Solutions, which is a values-driven experiential life coaching initiative. And he's going to talk a little bit more about what that is because it really piqued the interest for something and the reason why we're bringing this conversation to you. But something else I wanted to make sure we highlighted in his bio was what his heart and the things that he's trying to do in this community of mental health. It says here he has a commitment to create a collaborative and engaging community environment for the development of lasting change in the lives of others through thoughtful reflection, mindful consultation, and experiential life change strategies. That's what he's doing to strive to alleviate some of the human suffering that is in order to create that compassionate and a mindful human experience. And I wanted to highlight, and James, you can tell us a little bit more about you and your practice, but I wanted to highlight that part of your bio because I think so much of whether we speak for coaching or counseling, a lot of it is self-reflection. Right. And so when you're bringing a community of folks together and you're taking them through intentional self-reflection, what does that look like for your client?
Yeah, well, first, I want to just thank you, Hesha, for inviting me here for the conversation and expressing interest in Mzizi for Life Coaching Solutions and taking a look at the difference between coaching and counseling because there's an interesting energy shift or change that's occurring with the merging of the professions. And as you mentioned, as a result of the pandemic, we're just entering into a new stage of life in the way we work, in the way we interact with people, and coaching and counseling are going to be two very instrumental tools that can be used to make sure, you know, that people are getting the best out of their lives in this new world that we're living in now. So thank you for inviting me here today. And in regard to what I use in order to encourage the process of self-reflection, self-appraisal, and self-analysis, I begin with and actually I was trained to begin with the use of the solution-focused life wheel, which is a wheel that's broken up into 8 different life categories. And that's the initial assignment that a person who is interested in coming into counseling is given. It's emailed to them and they're encouraged to look at the 8 different life areas, all right? And then they should score themselves according to 0 to 10 in regard to their satisfaction in each of those different areas. Since the training that I completed in September of 2020, I've started working with a different life wheel. This one is actually known or used by a very well-known motivation and personal growth expert. His name is Zig Ziglar. He's been around for a very long time, and he uses an 11 life domain category life wheel. And so I'm gonna look at my cheat sheet because it's really difficult for me to remember all the different life categories. They are self-image, business and career, finance and wealth, health and fitness, social life and friends, family, romance and love, recreation and fun, contribution, and I think that kind of really means community building, personal growth, and spirituality. And so I went from using the 8 life category model to using the 11 life category model because I've really felt like the 11 domain life wheel is more culturally representative of people of color, because most of us have had some exposure to church. And so the spirituality life domain was really important to include in the life wheel. And the 8-stage model did not have a component for spirituality. But that's where the self-reflection process actually begins with the life coaching approach that I use.
Okay, so kind of a self-assessment, and you doing that first call, you're kind of digging in those answers with them.
Exactly. So we take a look at the lowest scores. I like to zero in on the lowest scores, and then ask them, you know, if they score like a 3, then ask them, you know, well, what can be done in order to make it a 4 or make it a 5? And how is it like, why is that scored differently from the areas where you score higher in? And in the areas where you scored higher in, can you do the things in the area where you scored low in to make that score higher? So that's actually the experiential action planning process, which is, I think, unique to the approach that Mzizi for Life Coaching Solutions uses.
Ah, okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that. I would like for you to dig a little bit more into that before we wrap up. But let's take a step back. Who is James Edwards? What is your credentials in getting me on a call and telling me how to plan a strategy if I think that I'm a 3 in a certain category? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, and so interested just in regard to education, you know, I wound up in college, you know, primarily by the grace of God. You know, I want to just identify myself as a believer. You know, I strongly believe in the power of good to lead people to the place that is best for them and where they need to be. And so I completed a 4-year degree at Morris Brown College and Atlanta University. And I started out wanting to be a doctor. You know, I wanted to be a podiatrist because my mom worked for years standing on her feet. So I started out wanting to be a podiatrist until I had my first encounter with the more advanced sciences. It was organic chemistry that really broke me. And so I met with one of the counselors or advisors in college, and they told me about community mental health. And so I switched my major to community mental health, and then that meant my department switched to Clark Atlanta University. And so I completed that program, and the goal was to become, to get a master's in public health. That plan was, diverted by life circumstances. And I just, I started working. So I got a job in a few different areas. And so I really consider myself a lifelong learner, just as a result of, the life circumstances that we encounter, in the process of this human experience. But as a result of that, I had my own interaction with addiction. And so I am a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 15 years and counting.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as a result of that, I was exposed to a design for living. And so it gave me an interest in the methods that can be used to help people recreate their lives. And so I wound up going back to school for, at the time, the program was called community counseling, I think, but in the course of the program, the program switched and it became community mental health or clinical mental health counseling at Argosy University. And I graduated from there in 2018.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I moved from Chicago to Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I live now. And then as a result of a grief process, actually, that I was going through, it kind of like, it's just amazing how God works. And so a former employer of mine, who is a clinical psychologist herself, she has an EDV in clinical psychology. She started her own life coaching program, and her former employees, she wanted to be a part of her first class. And so we completed the class with her, 3 months, 3-hour classes for, I think, like 12 weeks. And then we went through the screening process with her to receive the credentials through the International Coaching Federation. And that's when I was introduced to life coaching. And so I think most importantly, life experiences is what gives me the credibility to meet with others to help them prepare their action plan for change.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. And so getting to the topic of coaching versus counseling. I've heard a lot in your introduction and just in your experiences. You've done some public health or public health type of work, and you've also are you new to the life coaching and the mental health? That's what you come with, and then you were introduced into the life coaching.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. And so for Mzizi, you're able to capitalize on both of those kind of disciplines with the life coaching that you offer.
Yes.
Is that what? Okay. All right. And so what is there an area of expertise in the life coaching or in this industry that people need to be aware of?
Well, yeah, because you can have business life coaches, you can have health and wellness life coaches, you can go into Christian or religious life coaching. So there is a lot that can be done in the field, and it's going to grow and change tremendously. And so it's actually an interesting marriage or collaboration between two different professions that really excites me, because I love all clinical work, whether it's social work or case management. I just love, and I know from personal experience, the importance of the supportive aspect that clinical professionals provide to a person that's looking, who may be struggling. I know the importance. But with life coaching, you know, we all need support, and we all need that person to guide us effectively through our stages of change, whatever they might be. And a professional is different from the support, the natural supports that we might get from our significant other, our brothers or sisters, or friends and family, you know, because they invest their emotion into or progress. And that can be a barrier in a lot of instances. But a professional life coach or a professional therapist really should not include their own personal emotions into your process of change, in your stage of your process of recreating your life. So.
Okay. And that makes sense. And you brought in and we've been talking about coaching versus counseling, and you introduced another term, which is therapist. On the spectrum of, you know, professional counseling to the point where there's a chemical imbalance or something to the point to that effect, and you need a prescription to help you with that, or at the level of you just need someone to speak to and talk to. I think that's what the therapist will provide, right? Because this was a question from me to you during the time when I was kind of figuring all of these things out. Which one do I need, you know? And so help us to kind of wrap our mind around the different stages of things that we may go through, where it will tell us whether we just need someone to kind of coach us along the process, or we need someone to just listen, or if there's something we really need to go and do some testing for, if there's some medication that needs to be introduced into the spectrum of things. So tell us a little bit about those different levels of, I don't know what to call it, coaching or counseling, but tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, I guess we could call it the fork in the road, which is why consultation is so very important. And consultation is important in any profession that you do. I think you are screened or assessed, you know, when you think about when you apply for life insurance, even when you go for like your driver's license, you're screened and assessed, you know, your vision and, you know, your learning style, your memory is reviewed before you're given your license, your driver's license. And so the same thing really occurs in both the counseling and the coaching process. But the difference, I think the really important difference for most people when it comes to the differences between counseling and coaching, how therapy, counseling is different from coaching is that there is no clinical assessment used in coaching in most instances. There is not, you can have a coach that does not have an advanced or terminal degree, okay? And there's no doctor involved. But with therapy, you know, you might have a therapist that has that is a clinical psychologist, that has a, you know, terminal degree in psychology, or has a, you know, PhD in counseling, education, and supervision. And they have actually taken a test, a state test, to become licensed. In counseling, I mean, in coaching, maybe not so much. You know, there is a coaching credential that you can get through the International Coaching Federation. And if you're seeking coaching, you should ask the person who is offering you their services if they have that credential, because that shows that they've, you know, gotten some specific training. But I want to go back to the difference between whether a person needs counseling or coaching, which really gives me the opportunity to talk about the people who have a diagnosis with severe mental illness or serious mental illness, which is a profession and a population of people that I really love working with. There are so many exciting things that are occurring in what I like to call integrated care. That's where a person receives both behavioral health care under the same roof that they receive their physical health care. And so But the difference is with severe mental illness, there is an in-depth clinical assessment that has occurred, and it usually happens because the person has demonstrated, characteristics or qualities that put them in the framework to receive more advanced clinical services. And that could mean that they hear things, that other people in the room cannot hear, or they see things that other people in the room cannot see. And does that mean that they are crazy, weird, or strange? No, I do not advocate for the use of any of those terms. I like to tell people that, they experience the world a little differently. All right. And so that's the difference. And so in the consultation process, you need to determine, whether or not a person needs a higher level of care before they're able to move forward with you in the coaching process. And I think that that's the biggest difference between the two. There might not be a psychiatrist involved in coaching, whereas there might be in therapy or counseling.
Okay. And I like that explanation. And I was speaking with a friend of mine a few weeks ago, and she's at the level where she can prescribe medication. I believe she's a nurse practitioner. I'll be having a discussion with her as well. And she gave me some more information. So I want to kind of include that piece into it a little bit later. But again, going back to why I think this is so important again, and this is just telling my experience. During the pandemic, leading up to the pandemic, there was already a lot of things going on in my life, right? And so I just gotten out of a relationship that was pretty challenging. I had moved back to a state that I had thought that I was going to be moving and leaving. And so that was all pre-pandemic. And so I'm in this situation where my mind already is just kind of like, you know what, I'm tired, and then the pandemic happened. And choices need to be made in the pandemic as well. And so in my mind, pre-pandemic, I'm thinking I'm still moving. That's all right. I'm still moving across state, across the country or downstate, wherever. Anyway, but I'm still moving. And that was my plan. And for me, I'm a tunnel vision type of person. Once I get a project going or once I get a plan in motion, it's just onto that plan. And during the pandemic, when everything had to shut down, I was just kind of left with, wait, I got a whole plan that's going to help me start my next phase of my life because I'm leaving this behind. And, in the introduction phases of the pandemic, it wasn't as tough because sometimes you may just need a break from life. So you take that time, you're like, okay, we got to stay in to the end of the month. All right. And then the next month coming is like, nah, yeah, I got 30 more days. You like, all right, let's see what we're going to do with this. And that's not even talking about the mental part of thinking financially, because people are laid off. People are not getting, you're not going in, so you're not getting job or money, paychecks to sustain your lifestyle, especially if you're not a salaried employee. And so on top of those things, life is still going on for me. 6 months into the pandemic, I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed every morning, and it was just kind of one of those phases I got stuck in because I'm like, okay, we got to continue. Again, my apartment was still fully packed. I'm still in the mind frame of when this let up, I'm leaving, I'm doing something different. And so every morning getting up, sitting on the edge of your bed, like, okay, what decisions do I need to make? Again, I'm still trying to make decisions that's going that way. And it's obviously like, no, you're going to end up coming this way. But my mind is so focused on that. And because it's pandemic, ain't nothing moving from that. And so you built that frustration like, okay, this has got to let up some type of how. And when it does, I'm going to be ready to just take off. It doesn't happen, right? And so and then I start Googling stuff. Okay, well, what is depression? How do I know if I'm going through a depressive moment? Or how do I know if I'm just having anxieties? And it was some of those moments where it was just like, I'm frustrated because I didn't see any improvement happening. And so being the type of person that I am, I get in my head. And that's why I thought that this conversation was so important, because during the pandemic, I'm sure a lot of us found ourselves thinking like, what about me? You know, or we should have found ourselves doing that self-reflection process. We should have found ourselves like, are these things I need to be paying attention to? Or have I done this before? You know, what are some of the, where's this coming from? This new, you know, this heightened level of anxiety that I have, you know, and so I had to start seeking some answers. And of course, at that point, I was just Googling, and we know that's not the best thing to do. I found the therapy service and did probably a couple of sessions with that, ending up trailing off of that. But, and just bringing it back to some of those things, the thoughts that we have, the life situations that happen that take us to the point of, do I need to go talk to someone? Or do I just need a coach to kind of jolt me back into what I need to be doing? Can you speak to that a little bit?
And yeah, so Hesha, thank you, you know, just for sharing your experience, because I think the spheres or the spiritual forces, or I don't know, you know, God, you know, just knew that it was that time for the world. And so that's just, you know, my personal personal thoughts about the origin of the pandemic and the reason for it. But I think in those instances, in that experience that you had, you mentioned a few important things. Actually, you said you would stop and sit on the edge of the bed and think about what to do. And that's the reason why I incorporated experiential transformation and experiential learning into the life coaching model that I use with Mzizi for Life Coaching Solutions, because it's an important part where we have to just stop for a second and then decide which direction, you know, that we're moving in. And because I know your personal story, so you were thinking, you know, am I moving to the south of the country, or am I going west? You know, so what am I doing? Or am I staying put, and am I continuing my development here? What's going on?
And not to interrupt you, but even in that, because understanding the state of mind, my heart is going, right? And so my intentions, my thoughts, everything is going to be, I'm going down south, I'm going. But everything else is saying, no, you're gonna be here for a minute, you know, and I'm steady fighting and tussling against those two competing thoughts or realities. I don't know what it is, but that just kind of led me on this whole path of, do I need to be talking to someone?
Right. And the answer to that is yes, you do need to talk to someone, because feedback is a really important part of coming to the conclusion of where we're going next. But the type of feedback that you get is important too, because some of us go to our parents for feedback, our sisters and our brothers, but that might not necessarily be the feedback that is best for you. And so that's why I encourage everybody, you know, anybody, I don't care if you're at the top of your game, you're doing your best in life, make sure you consider going through a consultation with a life coach just to gather the information so that you're clear about what life coaching is. And then make sure you also consider having a psychiatric evaluation or clinical assessment for counseling. And I encourage people to do that. Just, you know, as we're out here, you know, as you're dating, you know, you know, we
now that's a whole word right there. That's a word.
We say it jokingly,
yes,
but they want to review, you know, whether or not somebody has had, you know, a psychiatric evaluation before you, you know, make certain life-changing investments in an individual. What relationships are, you know, they are life-changing and soul exchanging investments that, you know, can't be taken lightly these days, especially as we age. So
Very, very good points. And so, and again, taking it back to my experience and just hoping you could kind of draw some correlation to people who may be going through this at this point. What were some of the things that I could know right away, maybe, and thinking with the coaching and the therapy hat, what are some things if I'm sitting on the edge of that bed and I'm thinking, some things, what should be alarming thoughts to me that you need to go see some psychiatric type of help, you need to seek that type of help? Or what are some thoughts that I may be having that say, you need to see a coach, a life coach?
Yeah, so the difference for me is the duration of time that you found yourself waking up and sitting on the edge of the bed, where you were paralyzed and not able to move forward. How long did that occur? And then were there some physiological responses? Was there any crying? Were there any thoughts about ending your life? And if those thoughts are present, then life coaching is not the best fit for you. If you're crying to the point where you can't sit down with a life coach to engage in the process of action planning, life coaching probably isn't the best fit for you. If you're spending a lot of time talking about what happened to you between the ages of 1 and 6, or something paralyzing that happened to you when some traumatic experience that you may have experienced in your teenage years or early adult life, then life coaching probably isn't the best fit. You probably should see a trained clinical mental health professional in order to work through those issues and then come back to a life coach. And myself, I know there are a lot of people who do not think highly of medication, but there are some instances where medication, psychotropic drugs, the prescription of psychotropic drugs may be a good fit for a person for just a little while, on a temporary basis, until they're able to work themselves out of that situation where they are. And so the only way to be able to make that final determination is if they met with a psychiatrist or an MD, which is able, or a nurse practitioner is also able to prescribe medication as well. Okay.
And are there costs for your assessment?
No, consultations are absolutely free.
Okay.
My first year as a life coach and only my third year as a clinical mental health professional, so I'm still learning.
Okay.
So the services are complimentary at this point, especially when it comes to the consultations. But then if we decide to move forward with the action planning process, then that's where we talk about the process of, payment and what's within your ability, a person's ability to pay.
Okay. All right. And you're speaking with the life coach hat on, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But I also, my full-time job, I'm working as a clinical mental health clinician too, which is actually, a therapist. And I work part-time as a therapist as well. I picked up a part-time job with a private practice. So I've been doing that for 2 weeks. So.
Good. Now for a therapist, are their consultations free as well?
No, when it comes to therapy, you have to pay. And
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I would love to see services around, like grants available for people to do that, because I think what you said was important was get an assessment anyway, and I would have loved to, because I'm always self-reflecting and like, why did I do this? I'm just one of those type of people. And during that process, if I would have looked up, because there were some costs, if I would have looked up something, it was like, get a free assessment or something, I would have definitely did it, but there was a cost associated. It's like, let me do some more Googling real quick.
Yeah.
And get to that point. And then once I saw that what you were doing with Mzizi, I was like, oh, let me reach out to James and really get some information as to what I was going through and how we can help a community of folks to just kind of really, as you said, get to that fork in the road and make that correct choice into what you need to do. So tell me a little bit more about the type of people who is your client?
Well, in my daytime job, I only work with individuals who have a severe mental illness. And so they're either, bipolar, schizophrenic, schizoaffective, or schizophrenia. Those are the individuals I work with during the day. In the evening, I work with people who do not have a diagnosis. Some of them, are meeting with a therapist for their very first time, which is a huge responsibility because, you get to make the first impression about clinical, about therapy services. But in life coaching, I'm just pretty much open to any individual who is re-entering their life or in the process of recreating their life. So I like to work with individuals who have experienced some type of life-changing setback. That could be a death in the family, change of job. Really, I'm very much interested in working with individuals who have a history of substance use disorder that's led to some type of occupational or social impairment. And then my heart, of course, is with the LGBTQIA population. I consider myself an affirming clinician and an affirming helping professional. So individuals that are, as they say, or as we say, coming out, I would like to provide the support and tools for them to experience that process in a healthy and affirming way as well.
That's good, because of course that community really needs it. And you use the word, and is that a term that's used? You said you are a affirming therapist. Is that or is that something that you made up? I'm just asking.
Affirming is a word that I just subscribe to because there are, and I don't, necessarily, and then the American Psychological Association does not condone conversion therapy. And that's where a person who has identified as gay, lesbian, transgender, other, queer, where they can sit down with a therapist and learn tools to convert back to, being, having an attraction to the opposite sex versus the same sex. I don't speak down about that approach because I think that there is something that a person can learn about themselves as a result of that experience. Will it be a positive learning experience? Maybe not. But you can decide what the best fit is for you. And so I, describe myself as an affirming because I want to provide you with the tools and the knowledge to have the best experience of you affirming, identifying as gay, lesbian, transgender, or queer, or other, or intersex, or non-binary. So the rainbow is expanding every day. And so I just want to be one of those individuals here to provide a person with the support that they need in order to be successful and well-rounded in that experience, that life experience.
Great, great. Well, again, James, thank you so much for spending your time with me and helping us to understand the coaching versus the counseling dynamic. And if we have any questions doing follow-up, I'll definitely reach out to you if we have any people, asking other questions. But let us know, how can we get in contact with you?
Sure. You can contact me either on Instagram, Facebook, at Mzizi for Life Coaching. It's Mzizi for Life Coaching or Mzizi for Life Coaching Solutions. That's on Instagram or Facebook. Or you can contact me at James at Mzizi for Life Coaching. which is at the bottom of the screen here. .com. That's James at Mzizi for Life Coaching .com. And you can also give me a call at 602-772-6717. You can contact me there for your free, absolutely complimentary consultation to decide where you are at your fork in the road, if you need therapy or if you are a good fit for life coaching. So Hesha, I just want to say thank you for inviting me here to be a part of this podcast. It's just an amazing opportunity to share resources, add value, you know, to people's lives. And I'm always excited and amazed by the work that you're doing, and further encouraged to do my best in this life as an individual and as a professional. So thank you.
Thank you, James. Thanks again for your time. And last but not least, how do you have a website where we could get started on that free complimentary assessment?
Yes, that website is www.mziziforlifecoaching.com. That's www.mziziforlifecoaching.com.
And we'll see a link to start a assessment there.
Yes, you could take the different look at the different levels of life coaching that are available.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time, James.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.